is Lynn Donald with Arkansas Support Network. Today we're going to talk about transition planning. What do you need to know when your teenager is getting ready to graduate from high school or is entering high school? What do you need to know about getting ready for your student to graduate and enter the world of adult services? Let's look at what kind of plan needs to be in place. Under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, or IDEA, transition is defined as a process that should be results-oriented, focused on improving achievement, both academic and functional, in a child with a disability. And it looks at what that child needs to do during the school day that will allow him or her to move to post-school activities, which could be more training, vocational training, more education at the community college or a four-year college, some kind of employment, including supported employment, and other types of adult education and adult services, whether that be living services or employment services or other kinds of services in the community. So this is a plan that's going to address all of those different areas. It also says that the transition plan is based on the individual child's needs. That means every plan will be different because it will be based on a specific child rather than children age 16 or older. And it also will take into account that child's strengths, preferences, and interests. That means this is about what the child wants to do, what the child prefers to do, what the child is good at doing. And it includes instruction in school and other kinds of related services. It also includes community experiences and the development of employment and other kinds of living goals. So the transition plan is pretty comprehensive. It looks really at what all will my child be doing as he or she graduates from high school and becomes an adult. Let's talk a little bit about why this is important. Transition and moving into adulthood entails a lot of different elements, and it generally means that the young person is becoming more independent. But it also means that the young person begins to build a life of her own or his own. And that takes planning for any child. For a child with special needs, it can take a lot more planning that's more formal and planning that involves more elements. It's important because it's your child's life. And everyone, even young people with disabilities, have dreams. And everyone, including the parents of children with disabilities, have fears. So if we do a good job planning, then we have an opportunity to make those dreams come true. And if we do a good job planning, then hopefully we will have addressed some of the fears that are associated with that independence that our children so crave. Okay, so when does transition start and who needs to be part of it? IDEA says that transition, the formal process, begins in the first IEP that will be in effect when the child turns 16. This means that if you're writing an IEP and your child is already 15, at some point during that year the child will turn 16 and therefore a transition plan should be in place to cover that year. The public agency, that means the school district, the school that your child attends, must invite, under the law, the child himself to the IEP meeting, especially if you're considering the goals for that child and the transition services that are going to be needed for the child to reach those goals. So the public agency has an obligation to invite the student to the IEP meeting. Now, I think it's pretty important for parents to understand that if this is the first time their child has attended one of his or her IEP meetings, it will take a little bit of preparation to make sure that your child is ready to attend the IEP meeting. I personally recommend that young people start attending their IEP meetings when they become middle school age, at least. They need to begin to learn how to take an active role instead of letting other people plan for them. They need to be voicing their own preferences and asking for the help that they feel they need. So that's an important piece of it. Okay. If the child does not attend the IEP meeting, then the public agency has an obligation to check into other ways that they can make sure that the IEP team is considering what that child prefers and what that child is interested in. So there's a strong admonition in the law that says you have to figure out a good way to take into account what the child wants and what the child would prefer to do. The best thing is for the child to attend and speak for himself at the meeting. If that can't be done, then there's going to have to be some kind of documentation and discussion about how we are ensuring as an IEP team that that student's preferences and interests are taken into account. Also, if the parent and child consent, then the public agency should invite a representative of any participating agency that might be involved in services for that student. So, for example, if your child is going to need community living services and you have Medicaid waiver available to you, then you may want your provider, the staff that work with your student to be present. If you have not applied for adult services, then you may want the representatives of some of those services to be present to explain what they can do and how they can be involved in the transition planning process. I think it's very important that the young people, as I said previously, begin to attend their own IEP meetings. If what we're striving for is for our young people to assume as much responsibility for themselves as they are able, and for them to attain as much independence as is possible for them, then it really does begin with them making plans and decisions about what their lives will look like once they've graduated from high school. Self-determination is a key word these days in terms of special education and young people's rights. And there are all kinds of research and also programs geared toward showing how important self-determination is, and in helping schools and parents help their young people become more self-determined. It's a powerful motivator. So if your young person starts early making choices and decisions and letting his or her preferences be known, then that in itself, according to the research, will promote positive transition outcomes. So just the fact that your child is involved already indicates a high expectation of success in transition. If the transition services require that interests and preferences of the student be considered, then that is the critical point at which we need to hear from the student. Even the most involved, best parents in the world may not have heard directly from their young person exactly what it is he or she wants to get out of high school and what their goals are for themselves once they graduate from high school. I can't tell you how many parents have said how surprised they were to find out that their son or daughter actually does want a place of their own, or maybe actually does want a job, and a specific kind of job, and has an interest in learning how to do some specific kinds of things. We shouldn't take for granted that our young people are not making their own plans or don't have their own dreams. They really do, and they need to have an opportunity to express those. The process doesn't happen overnight. It's something to which we have to pay attention early on, and that's why I recommend that students be involved in their own IEPs as early as the middle school age. It's something that they have to learn. It doesn't come naturally, and public speaking is kind of terrifying for a lot of people. So the more opportunities they have to gain that experience, the better the chance that when we ask them in their junior or senior years of high school what kinds of things they really do want to do once they graduate, the more accurately and honestly they'll be able to express that. All of this work from middle school on, offering students that opportunity to make those choices and to speak up for themselves, is something that pays off immensely as we go through the transition process. So it should be part of the transition process.